bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Caught me mid-sip. Fade to Black. Tuesday, October 29th, 2024. Very excited. Let's do this, man. Yeah. What a great week on the show. Last night, Mike Ricksecker was here. Tonight, Kevin J. Anderson, New York Times bestselling author, is with us tonight. And we're just going to talk science fiction all night long. That is a big, wide stroke of the pen and everything that is around it. We're going to do that tonight with Kevin. Tomorrow night, Wednesday, Jim Harold is back with us. And the thing is about Jim, he's a great friend. I've known him for years, and he's awesome. Excuse me. I should have hit the cough button, but I didn't. It's my show. Do what I want. Jim Harold, having one of the number one podcasts in the world, and has been doing it forever. But he also manages to scare the crap out of me. And it's Halloween week. Happy Halloween, by the way, everybody. Tomorrow night, Jim Harold is back with us on Halloween like he is every year. Tomorrow night is the Halloween campfire. And then Thursday night, Judica Isles is with us for our Fade to Black Halloween special. And that will be Thursday night. And hanging out with me on Halloween, and you're going to take the time to do that, well, I'll make the show very special. I promise. You're not going to want to miss it. That is Thursday night. I do have 4 major events coming up. Peru and Bolivia coming up in a couple of weeks with Brian Forrester. Yes, no Fade to Black for a couple of weeks, but I'm going to be down there working, and I'm going to live stream from down there too. So you'll be able to get your Jimmy fix on. So don't worry about that. That's November 15th through the 27th. Right after that, I come back from Peru, and then I am hosting the Conscious Life Expo, the biggest conference in the world, for the 10th straight year, hosting that event. Such an honor and a privilege at the LAX Hilton. Oh, man, 25,000 beautiful, spirited individuals getting together and getting their knowledge on February 7th through the 10th, 2025. The links for that are below. Tickets go on sale November 3rd. Rise of the Guardians comes up after that. That is March 29th and 30th, 2025 in Sedona, Arizona. Again, hosting duties, but I'm also going to present there as well. And then after that, the Contact Modalities Expo. Very excited about this expo because, yes, I admit it. I'm from the Midwest, and I love it, and I'm proud of my heritage. I am, and I'm going back to Wisconsin, Delavan, Wisconsin, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and at Delavan Lake, beautiful resort. And so I'll see everybody there. Again, hosting duties. Yeah, I love hosting these events. So hosting, but I'm also going to do a presentation or two and host some panels like I do at every conference. So that is May 2nd through the 4th. And again, the links are below. Very excited about that event. I wanted to start the show with this tonight. I was going to do it last week, but I had to get over it. Tonight's show is dedicated to a really old and great friend of mine, Donnie Martinez, who is a bass player who passed away last week. I'm already getting choked up. I've known Donnie since 1987, 88. That goes back a long ways. We recorded a lot together, hung out, we're virtual roommates. next door to each other, and his band and everybody in his band, very close friends, and passed away in his 50s. And the whole thing, because and again, I don't want to start the show off on a bummer. I want to be happy about this. He was just one of the funniest, coolest, happiest people, and talented that I've ever been around, and bass player, just an extraordinary individual that managed to make everybody around him happy and comfortable, and he was just like that, and just tragically just taken away from us. So last week when I got the news, I was walking into walls, and I'm managing to get this out of my throat and dedicate this to Donnie tonight. Donnie Martinez, rest in peace. There you go. All right. Yeah, I'm all choked up tonight. Kevin J. Anderson is with us. We're going to be talking about science fiction. I have his new book. It's right here. It is called Nether Station. What is great about this book, this is a very unique show tonight, because on the bottom of the book right here, it says pre-release advanced copy, uncorrected. On the back of the book, it says advanced copy, release date, October 29th, 2024. That is today. And the New York Times has already done a review on the book. You know, I got to say, pulling a review like that out of the New York Times is pretty friggin' amazing. And so tonight we're going to be talking about all of that, because he is a best-selling author. We're going to talk a little bit about this. I just started the book, okay? So there you go. But we're going to talk about Nether Station and his other work, and that includes the X-Files, Star Wars, Dune, Batman, Superman, and how stories get written, where do the ideas come from, and how they have how science fiction, which science and fiction, so it's the combination of fiction and science. That's what science fiction is, and how that influences creativity and ideas in our world today. He has published, are you ready? More than 190 books, 58 of which have been national or international bestsellers. He has edited numerous anthologies, written comics and games, and composed the lyrics to 3 rock albums. He has 24 million copies in print in 34 languages. His website is below, but that is a heck of an intro. Link is below, wordfire.com. It's on our website, it's in our social media, and it's in the description below. I would like to welcome for the first time to Fade to Black, Kevin J. Anderson. He's right there. How you doing, brother?
I am doing great, and I know you're all choked up. I want to kind of throw in how sorry I am for Donnie, and you and I both have kind of a rock and inspiration connection too, because I was very, very close friends with Neil Peart, the drummer, legendary drummer from the rock band Rush. And he and I wrote several novels together, and he passed away close to 5 years ago now. And that was, I still get all choked up thinking about him, because he was, when I started listening to Rush, I was just in high school, and I had their poster up on my wall.
We all did. Kevin, you didn't plant a flag on that. We all
well, but my first novel was inspired by a Rush album. And I put in the acknowledgments that, you know, this was inspired by the brilliant work of Neil Peart, Geddy Lee, and Alex Lifeson from Rush. Right. And when that book was published, it's called Resurrection Inc. You can order it online. But when that book was published, I just took a flyer. I took 3 copies of it, and I signed one to each of the 3 guys from the band. And I just mailed it off to Mercury Records, to Rush, care of Mercury Records. And it was like, okay, I'm mailing it off to like the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you know, no hope in the world that anybody would ever see this. But like a year and a half later, I come home and I get a letter in my mailbox, an actual letter. You know, this is before email, a letter with a Canadian stamp on it, and the return address is Neil Peart. And I open it up, and Neil Peart had read my book, and he wrote me a fan letter. And wow. I mean, that was like mind blowing. And so he put at the end like a PS, if you would like to reply, I would be happy to correspond with you. And I'm like, this is like God telling me, okay, I'll talk to you. And so I wrote Neil back, and that started a correspondence. And we were like really good friends for 31 years before he passed away. And we did short story together. He wrote the introduction to one of my story collections. And then he asked me to write the novel. Rush's very last studio album was called Clockwork Angels. It's like this steampunk fantasy concept album with airships and pirates and lost cities and things. And Neil asked if I wanted to take that story, write it into a novel. And I it's like, well, yeah, of course. And so I wrote that novel. And, you know, the funny, we'll talk about how weird the publishing business has gotten. But so here I've written this book with Neil Peart, and they're about to go on tour, and they're one of the top best-selling bands in the history of the human civilization. I mean, they've got more platinum records than anybody else. So we've got this going for us. They're going to go to all these concert tours, and this book is going to be sold next to the T-shirts on every one of these concert tours. And I myself, you just read off my credits. I got 24 million books in print and 58 bestsellers. So we've got this. I'm going to write the novel based on the last Rush album. We didn't know it's the last at the time, but it was the last Rush album. And all of my regular publishers turned it down. They literally said, how do you write a book based on a novel? And do Rush fans even read? And so we went to Neil's Canadian publisher, which was beautiful.
Rush fans, the most sophisticated, educated music fans in the world, right?
And
shows
so
you what a publisher knows.
And so we went to Neil's Canadian publisher, ECW Press, beautiful publisher. They produce fine books. And so we went with them. They made this great, beautiful edition of Clockwork Angels, and it came out and it hit the New York Times bestseller list like first week out, like right away, first week. And this publisher, ECW Press, they had never had a New York Times bestseller before. I had to send them the digital clipping for the newspaper saying, look, guys, you actually published a bestseller. But my favorite thing was that I was able to text Neil right before he went up on stage. And he was doing a concert somewhere in New Hampshire or something like that. And I remember I texted him. I said, not only are you an adequate drummer, you're also a New York Times bestselling author. And that was, I mean, you surprised me because this wasn't what we were going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, well, no, but it's surprising. It's surprising me too. But I want to stop you there for a second because you said something earlier that resonated with me. So I actually want to go back to that point when I'm speaking for legions of fans that were just like me, where I'm reading science fiction, I'm watching the movies, I have an interest in that. I don't care if it's Lord of the Rings or Dune or 2001, right? You know, you're doing your thing as a kid, and I'm probably older than you, by the way. So, and I'm talking about the mid 70s, and when Rush started to have their influence on me, 77, 78, 2112 has come out. All the World's a Stage, the live album, which I wore out. I was probably on my third copy by 1979. I'm reading the words and listening to the stuff with headphones with an album and getting sucked into this futuristic sci-fi panoramic world that was created with Neil's lyrics and, of course, the band's music and production. And everybody got introduced because of being a fan of music, but was also introduced to this dystopian, futuristic idea and the Federation and, you know, everything else that Rush had brought to us. And that's magical. And that allows you to get the creativity going. It worked for me, and it worked for millions of fans, including yourself.
Well, and the other fun thing is that, so I was a nerd, and I think we are about the same age, because 77, 2112, that is when I first got my first album from them and started playing. But I was the nerdy kid in high school. I always had my face in a comic book, or I was reading Dune, or I was reading Lord of the Rings. And, I was a skinny kid, bad haircut, hand-me-down clothes, had glasses. And, all the top 40 songs about, ooh, the beautiful 17-year-old girl he's dating, or, oh no, my girlfriend broke up with me. Well, us nerds weren't going to get girlfriends anyway, so we might as well listen to Rush and like 2112 and Cygnus X1 with this black hole exploration and Farewell to Kings and all these things. So these songs spoke to us cerebral fans rather than kind of the sappy I lost my girlfriend songs, because I didn't have a girlfriend. So that kind of really resonated with me, and those songs inspired me so much. And so I was so honored to be able to get to know Neil as a friend, and then as a collaborator. And so we, like I said, their last studio album was Clockwork Angels, and I did the novel with Neil for that one. And then we wrote 2 sequels, Clockwork Lives and then Clockwork Destiny. Neil passed away about 5 years ago from glioblastoma, so brain cancer. And he was sick for a while, and we plotted this last book together. But when I visited him, we would talk a little bit about it, but then we'd talk about other more important things. And he told me that I would have to write this novel after he was gone. So it took me like more than a year after his passing before. I mean, you're really shaken up about your friend. I was like devastated with Neil.
Yeah, I can only
a year before I could even look at the notes. And that came out. But I just want to say a thing for your audience. The Clockwork Angels came out in 2012. So if you order it on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com, you can put the link if you want. I have my own store called WordfireShop.com, where you can get autographed copies. I just plug this because you can't just walk into a bookstore and buy it. It's been from 2012. It's like you can't walk into a theater and watch Empire Strikes Back. These things turn over in the bookstore, but they are forever available on Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, WordfireShop.com, all these places. So I just the last time I was on one of these shows, I got all these letters back from people saying, well, I went into the bookstore and I couldn't find your 20-year-old book. Well, you're not gonna. That's
okay. So so I'll do a shameless plug for you right now. So all of you Fadernauts, everybody listening to me, head over to Wordfire.
WordfireShop.com. Wordfire is the general one. It's not the store.
We've got the links are below. But Kevin doesn't know this, but I'm going to tell him that all of the Fadernauts that order from WordfireShop.com, he's going to sign the books for you. All right, so get some autographed copies and support. And I think that's really cool. So, and we'll mention that later on in the show. Now, let's segue for a second. Let's just we've got a lot to cover tonight. I want to start.
We could talk for 2 hours.
We might do overtime. Notice I'm wearing a Nexus. I wore my science. My Arrakis shirt is in the laundry. Otherwise, I would have dug it out and worn that tonight. Have you ever seen something in the sky that you can't explain?
There's a lot of things I can't explain, and I spent a lot of time out hiking. I camp, and there's when you're among everybody else, when you're sitting there in the city, or you're in a shopping mall, or with a bunch of people, everything's working fine and everything seems to make sense. But when you get out by yourself, like I live in Colorado, so I can go into the deep wilderness, and I'll hike many miles, and I'll camp way out there. And if you are sitting all alone by yourself, and it's dark outside, and you're just looking up at that empty sky, and it's like you can fall for more than 1,000,000 miles just into nowhere. To me, it just brings out this incredible sense of both a sense of wonder, but kind of a sense of intimidation, because we're all kind of full of ourselves, and everything's about me, and this is my life. But when you're out there and you're alone and looking at the universe, you get a feel about like being a grain of sand in the beach of the universe. And that is both wondrous, but it's also kind of terrifying. I'll tell you one. I'm not talking about seeing UFOs, but here's an experience that I had that I got to relate. So when I was in college, I went on a backpacking trip and I hiked to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Okay, and I slept overnight down on the Colorado River bank, and so this was a hot day. It's Arizona. It was 110 degrees out or something that day, and all the canyons were really hot. And so I'm kind of bedding down because the sun had set and it's starting to get dark, and I'm lying there, and then there was this sequence. There's boom, boom, crack, boom. And it was like this sequence of shotguns going off, and they would echo down the canyon. And I was lying there. It was so eerie. And I was like, what on earth is going on? And finally, there was a forest ranger not too far away. I said, what is that sound? And she said, well, the canyon walls get so hot from the sun during the day that once the sun sets, the shadows come down kind of like a guillotine blade. And the temperature drops so quickly that the hot rocks cool down so fast that they like flake off like cannonballs from the side of the canyon.
What?
And so I was listening to these rocks literally popping off the canyon walls and booming out, and because the canyons were enclosed, it would like echo. And
holy crap, I never knew that.
I mean, that's not a paranormal. That's not a paranormal experience, but it was one of those like
could be a.
So
I mean, you could.
Cool.
Kevin, you could freak yourself out with that.
I was glad the ranger was there to explain it to me, because otherwise, like, I don't know if I'd sleep that night. Like, what's going on here? But
okay, so back to the question: have you ever seen anything in the sky that you can't explain?
Nothing overtly. Like I mean, there are a few things that I've got an astronomy degree, so I spent a lot of time with my own telescope and staring up there. I never personally encountered something that I thought was an encounter that they found me, but I'm a boring person, so they wouldn't be looking for me anyway. So, but that is working on the X-Files, one of my favorite lines is "I want to believe," and that's kind of the open mind and seeing. I mean, I know for certain that I don't understand what's going on out there. And I try to understand. I try to put the pieces together, but I'm not gonna like say there's no such thing as other stuff out there.
What do you make of the hysteria that is going on with Capitol Hill, the Senate, the House, the Department of Defense, leaked, U.S. Navy videos and UAPs, and this whole conversation that is happening in the media? Right? It's pretty crazy about being visited by stuff not of this earth. This was never a front and center conversation on every front, right? The military, the political front, the geopolitical front, and all of media, all of the legacy media. Suddenly, it's okay to talk about UFOs without the X-Files music playing in the background.
Well, I thought it was fascinating for us to discover how seriously these government organizations took it. Because, and I don't know if this was just naturally happened or if this was like intentional downplaying or kind of that making us snicker, oh yeah, UFOs and stuff like that. But now we find out that there was a full-on, totally serious research and organizations. But here's a spin that I want to put in the other direction that has in some ways increased my skepticism, because in the 50s and 60s all those famous UFO photos came out. The people would see a flying saucer and they would take a picture of it, and you can't quite debunk it as fake, and so you find all these images. And that was when somebody actually took a picture with like a big camera with a flash bulb on it and everything like that. Well, nowadays, every single person's got a camera with them every single instant. And so why is it that we haven't been flooded by zillions of unprovable encounter photographs?
Because it's so easy
to take one. Now, just
okay.
So just
wait.
Go ahead.
Wait. This is where I have to pump the brakes because you were asking me the question. So let me answer. And you're a good host, by the way. Really good. You should have your own show.
Here, Jimmy, let me ask you that question.
Yeah. But it's this. In most cases, and I am guilty of this too, because when somebody tells me they've seen something and I say, well, did you take a picture? No, I didn't have the chance. All right. I have seen the craziest stuff. Okay. Unexplainable, undeniable, nuts stuff. And I've never taken a picture. Took a picture once. And why? Most of it comes and goes in a second, and you don't get an announcement. Nobody's saying, okay, get your cell phone ready. Here we come. That's not what happens, right? You see something, boom, and it's gone. No, there is no opportunity for that. And I can show you a video. I saw this 400-foot object in the middle of the day. I've got 30 friends with me, and it pops out behind this mountain. It's black. I won't get into the details, but it's a clear blue sky. It's right there. It was insane. Okay, this is Independence Day stuff. Mm-hmm. And I jump up. I got binoculars. I jump up and I yell, video, 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 pictures, pictures, pictures. And I came back down and sat down, looked at it, absorbed it, looked at it again, absorbed it, it's moved across the sky. I come back to the binoculars. Person sitting next to me, Steve, says, it phased out. I went, what? And I look, and it's gone. I thought we were going to look at it for a couple of hours. The people that were there taking pictures, they're taking pictures everywhere but where they should be. They didn't know. And it only lasted for 15 seconds. So, and there it was crystal clear. It was beautiful. I can play you the video of me yelling and screaming, and the person that took the video, right, that's shooting the video is shooting everywhere, but right, and that's a classic example. And that you're never ready for when it happens. When you least expect it, that's when it goes down. Like anything else. But it's like asking why people don't take pictures of car accidents when they happen. You were there, right? You didn't take a picture when it was going down? Well, what are you talking about? It's the same situation.
I'm still going to push back though, because we got all those photos in the 50s and 60s, and it was exactly the same situation, but less, because not many people had their big camera with them all the time. And so I agree with what you're saying, that how difficult it is to get something in this instant of a witnessing. But I would think that more people would have opportunity now, because everybody's got an iPhone or Android, but they didn't have one in the 50s and 60s, and yet we got all those pictures in the 50s and 60s. No,
yeah, but you know what they had in the 50s and 60s that we don't have today? Hubcaps.
What? I didn't hear the word.
They have hubcaps. That's what they had in the 50s. Hubcaps and frisbees. And I'm not saying
I see. Okay,
yeah. And I'm okay. Look, I'm not naive, okay, or anything like that. But I have seen what I have seen, and the nothing's going to change my own experience. But let me say this. In my intro, when I, science fiction, and that is something that in your community is talked about all the time. We talk about it out here too, but the rest of the world needs to understand science fiction has evolved into a pop culture term, but we've got to back up and remember the etymology and why that was put together the way it was. It was fiction written with science added to it, and therefore it is science fiction. And I think that's an important point to examine with all of this, because back then science fiction in the 50s was such a big deal. The world was a new place. We were promised moon bases and hotels, orbiting the Earth, and all of the big stuff that was going down with Hollywood was usually involving little green men and flying saucers from Mars and what have you. And that that was just there. But then the reports started coming out of what people were seeing in the skies. So I think out of that hysteria and people having fun, we had a preponderance of hubcaps being published, and which, you know, we still have the same fake images today. Some of them are real. Some of it is real. The footage that was released from the Department of Defense certainly shows something. I'm not sure what it is, but is the government sitting on other stuff? I don't know. Now, okay, but this is the spin. I got to throw this back to you. In 1995, which to me seems like yesterday, right? 1995, 30 years ago, we were still the only planet in the universe, right? That's the way we looked at it. We were the only star system. We hadn't discovered another planet yet outside of our own star system. It hadn't happened. Happened later on in 1995. Kind of, you know, they thought they saw something in 92.
Little hint of something on the spectrograph.
Yeah. And then 1995 comes along. Then finally, we had confirmation of 3 exoplanets in 1998. 3. Okay. Today, we now know what science fiction always knew, right? That the universe is teeming with life. Every star in the universe, because of the process of what makes a star, has at least one planet or more. We have 8, 9, 10 here. Who's counting? Just with our stars. So that's a lot of planets, and that's a lot of life. And that's the other side of where we are today, where science is supporting the fiction of the past.
Well, and I just to be clear, I'm saying that I'm very open to the possibility. Especially your math. When I look at, people don't comprehend, and I should have looked it up because I'm really bad to remember these big long numbers. But the number of stars in our galaxy is like, it's got so many zeros after it, you can't even comprehend that number. And
at least minimum of 1 trillion.
Okay, 1 trillion stars in our galaxy, and there are 1 trillion galaxies. So add that number and all those stars, and a lot of them have planets around them. So if the sheer statistics, of course something is going to have life, and of course something's going to evolve into intelligent life. And it's just, I have obviously that happens. I think what I was getting at is more of a sad skepticism, in that our digital processing abilities, our deep fakes, our AIs, the resolution of what you can do, is we can make a fake that is so indistinguishable that if you brought up a genuine 100% real thing, so many people would think it is AI generated or fake, that you would never convince everybody.
That's the conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the conundrum.
But yet it is. I mean, so I go out walking almost every day. That's how I do my writing with a digital recorder. I go out walking, and just the other day I was walking like down my street. We're kind of on a wooded area, and suddenly I was 15 feet from a bobcat that walked in front of me and sat there and looked at me. Well, I got my camera out and I took a picture of that thing, and I looked at it for about a minute and it ran away. But I was just like, so instantly, this is a surreal encounter. I mean, not a paranormal encounter. It's a bobcat, but it's still such an interesting, unique encounter that it made this huge impact on me. And I got a picture of it, and it was just something that was so profoundly. Again, I love being by myself, so I kind of get to feel my place in the universe, and there's such a sense of wonder out there for me that I try to apply that into my writing. I mean, that's where stories come from, where you go, man, that is really cool. I want to write something about that. And hence,
I find that fascinating. I find, well, and here is here is another thing, and there's so much of this out there, but I'm just thinking of Dune and Frank Herbert really quick. It just comes to mind. But you can apply this across any author's work, just about. But when Herbert first suggested the navigators and the folding of space, now, of course, with through the spice. Okay, that's another concept altogether. But the folding of space, so you would not travel these vast distances, you just appear where you need to go. Right. Now, when the book came out, and this idea was put out there, it is now a term that is used in physics constantly, right? Where I'm not sure the Einstein-Rosen bridge and special and general relativity and those equations, which were looked at later, and the ideas and these concepts were pulled out of the equations. But I'm not so sure that Einstein ever talked about or thought about folding the fabric of space in order to get from one point to another. But Herbert popped that into a book, and then great minds in the sciences grab hold of that and then advance it. And I think that is one of the contributions of science fiction, where these creative minds out there in science grab hold of an idea that was put out there from somebody that was being creative.
Well, I've kind of got this really interesting hypothesis that a lot of people have talked about, that science fiction predicts the future, that they talk about what's going to happen in the year 2500 or whatever. But I think it's kind of the opposite, that science fiction inspires the future, that we science fiction writers make up interesting stuff and it's really cool. And then some real physicist, some real engineer reads the book where I just made up something that is a entertaining and thought-provoking story, and that sparks something in them. So they go, you know what? I can probably make something like that. Now, so Jules Verne wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and he wrote about this armored submarine boat that could go under the water. And that inspired people to make a submarine. The very first nuclear submarine was named the Nautilus because
That's right.
those who invented it were so inspired by Jules Verne that they could make it. But let me show you something even more recent. I'm sure you all have watched Star Trek: The Next Generation. Well, they threw in things where somebody would walk up to Captain Picard and hand him basically an iPad, and he would read it and sign something and hand it back. Well, the pad that was used in Next Generation was the inspiration for these iPads and digital pads. That all those Microsoft people, all the Apple people, they're all nerds and they all watch Star Trek. And think about, just if you look at the engineering room that Geordi LaForge down in the Enterprise, and when they've used it in the other Star Trek things, just those visual panels with the iconic stuff and they're moving things around. If you watch it now, it doesn't make an impact. But when they came out, we hadn't seen anything like that.
That's right.
You know about an iPad, an icon-based interface. Well, Star Trek did that first, and it was just a visually cool thing. And you might remember the movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, and he had that virtual using these controls with hands and kind of virtual goggles on, and we do that now. And it's science fiction did it first. Now, it wasn't that science fiction was predicting that would happen in the future. They were just doing. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the filmmaker who made Minority Report, but somebody thought that was a really cool visual to be putting into a movie. And then other engineers ran with that and thought that's a cool way of doing a virtual interface. So I don't know.
I know. I live in Hollywood. I know that there are actors out there that practiced at home doing that interface. right? They're sliding, right? They're pulling. They practice that because that's all they're doing, right? They're in front of a green screen. That's going to get added later, right? Right. I love the swipe. Everybody's got their own swipe, and that's a new form of method acting. I'm sure that they're teaching at the Actor Studio in New York how to do the
virtual swipe style.
Yeah, virtual swipe. I think about that all the time. But isn't that fascinating though? How commonplace. Look, I don't want to sound like I'm some dolt, some fundamental brain. Well, I kind of am. That it is so commonplace where we don't appreciate what the cell phone really represents today. I mean, really represent. It is
tricorder. My iPhone is a tricorder. It does everything that Dr. McCoy's tricorder did in the classic Star Trek.
And we just take it we take it for granted, and all of the technology around us. When if you go back to 2001, you mentioned Minority Report. Steven Spielberg. I had it. I couldn't get it out. He directed Minority Report. Okay. If you go back to 2001 and the scene where he walks into the phone booth and does the video call to Earth and talks to his daughter and wishes her happy birthday, right? And all of this, especially when that film came out, 68, 69, that'll never happen. It's really cool, right? Now it's so commonplace, we don't want to do FaceTime.
Well, it took forever.
And look what we're doing right now. Look what we're doing right now.
It's so comfortable now, but science fiction was talking about video phones for forever, and it kind of got to be a joke because we had the technology for a long time. It just nobody wanted to do it because then you have to get dressed and comb your hair and whatever before you're on. But was it COVID or before that suddenly, wait a second, everybody wanted to. I don't want to talk on the just audio phone anymore. I want to be able to see and interact with you like we're having a real conversation. But I think that's just something we've gotten used to, and I feel like an old geezer when I go, you kids today don't realize what it was like back when we were young. We had to like stand on a landline and we had to dial the phone and we couldn't walk more than 5 feet away from the wall. And I think it's great. It's just kind of I love seeing the progress. Sometimes it overwhelms me because I haven't learned this operating system before they're already upgrading to a damn new one, and I don't know that one next.
So in your approaches to this, let's get into the science part of science fiction for a bit. How do you approach interstellar travel? How do you approach it?
Well, in fact, I just wrote this book called Nether Station, which is all about discovering a wormhole that would give you a shortcut to the star system Alpha Centauri. So it's like you were talking about folding space. This is like a hole drilled through the fabric of space-time to get from point A to point B, which is the edge of the Earth solar system and, say, Alpha Centauri. And you travel through that little shortcut. It's like taking a highway bypass, and suddenly you get there. Wormholes were predicted by Einstein's theory of relativity. There's been a lot of research on them that they may be passages through the fabric of space, and you can make a shortcut. Of course, you have to hope that the other end goes somewhere where you want to go, rather than just in the middle of nowhere. But I think they're fascinating. I mean, black holes are something we all have heard about, but a black hole is a bottomless pit and you never come out of it. A wormhole is actually a tunnel, and you go from one place to another. And I don't write my books to be a science lesson. I wrote like Nether Station to be a really scary cosmic horror science fiction novel. Anybody who likes Alien or Event Horizon or Pitch Black, those kind of like really scary science fiction movies, That's what I was trying to do with Nether Station, and I think I succeeded. It is kind of a skin crawly thing, because if you look, I grew up reading science fiction since I was a kid. I loved it. I had a telescope. I wanted to explore the universe. I wanted to join Starfleet. I wanted to go seek out new life and new civilizations. I wanted to go where no one has gone before and see all these things. But I also get to thinking that space can be a pretty darn scary place. That it is
Scariest.
vastly empty. It's completely dark. It's cold. It's this big void that's out there that you cannot grasp how far apart even close stars are. That there's so much empty nothing out there. And if you're in a spacesuit and you fall forever in whatever direction you were going. And if that doesn't put chills down your spine. And so in Nether Station, they've discovered a wormhole up at the far edge of our solar system, like right up by the cometary cloud. It's like the farthest back, emptiest part, and it's all dark, and the sun is only this little bright star way below. And if they discovered this wormhole, and there's an expedition sent up, and a guy, he's kind of an Elon Musk sort of dude, that he thinks that if this shortcut works, he wants to build like a Grand Central Station up there so that he can kind of control space travel and colonize Alpha Centauri and all that stuff. And he's got this team of interesting people that have come along, and they all have to be sort of misfits, because who else is going to want to be away from home for 10 years and be farther from anybody than ever? And so they get up there and they start sending probes through, and let's just say weird and creepy stuff starts to happen. And the greenhouse dome where they raise all their fruits and vegetables starts to be contaminated by this weird fungus leprosy thing, and the lab rats go crazy and start eating each other, and you're out there, you're isolated. You think being alone on a polar exploration base in Antarctica is isolated and scary? Try being millions of miles from home. And so these people start to discover that this wormhole, it's called Nether, the Nether wormhole, because it's out in the far nether regions of space, that it might not just be a shortcut, that it might be the entrance to the labyrinth where a whole bunch of really powerful dark elder gods have been imprisoned, like these Lovecraftian. If your listeners know about H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos and the just space horror, it's like these ancient beings that have left their marks, and they're gone now, but they were scary as crap. They were so powerful that you would go insane if you just looked at them, because they're so alien. And they kind of discover maybe some of those things are inside the wormhole, and they've just woken them up. And
what was the byline? In space, nobody can hear you scream. Right?
That was Alien, and
that was Alien. I watched it the other day. I watched Alien the other day.
It's scary.
I forgot how bleeping excellent that movie is, and I've seen it so many times, but it had been a couple of years. And I went back for some reason. It's on my Halloween scary movie watch list, on Amazon or whatever, and or whatever AI feed is coming into my streaming services. But I watched it, and I honestly forgot how great of a story it is. Now it's everything else that's in it: the cinematography, the screenplay, the story, the characters. All of it is excellent, but I got to tell you, I don't think anything is worse than a monster in space, because you can't call 911. It's just you. It's just you and your buddies. Nobody's coming to the rescue. You're in a tin can, right? You're not running anywhere. You're already claustrophobic, and that's a bad play. That or a submarine, that could be maybe just as bad.
And it's a dark and gritty tin can. It's not the bright and shiny Starship Enterprise where everybody wants to go. Like it's like Club Med in space. The Nostromo and Alien is like, oh, this is a garbage scow. This is dark and claustrophobic, and it's dirty, and nobody wants to wander around. And the crew members, they're not like Captain Kirk and Starfleet that want to seek out new life forms. These guys just want a paycheck and they don't want to do any more work than they have to do. They're kind of low-level blue-collar workers in space. They're not the heroic explorers. They're just doing their job. And that was a completely different vibe than what we had seen before. It's like the gung-ho. I'm trying to remember. Alien came out a little bit before Star Wars, I think. It wasn't after.
No, Alien was
right around the same time.
No, Star Wars was 77. Alien was 80, 81. Hold on.
Really?
Hold on. I'll tell you. I'll tell you right now.
If only we had this internet database that we could look things up.
There's this new thing called the internet is going to be huge. 1979.
Okay, so it was 2 years after Star Wars. So we had so before that we had seen Star Trek, which was bright Starfleet go out and do stuff, and then we saw Star Wars, which was kind of more gritty and lived in, and it wasn't quite so shiny, but it was still colorful and it was still exciting and it was still adventure packed and the rebels and the X-Wing fighters and the Death Star. But Alien was a haunted house in space. It was It was.
Well, then you have the biological element with Geiger and that whole concept of everything looked like it was made out of a spinal cord, right? Yes. Which is just freaky. Well, you know what though? I'll tell you the original monster. Then we're going to circle back. The question was propulsion systems. Is this if you go back to Forbidden Planet and the concept of that monster being generated from the mind, right? And it's invisible. Remember when it first lit up when it hit the electric fence?
That was a great movie.
It scared the crap out of me.
Well, and it wiped out.
Still does.
But the scariest part was that there was this. I hope you people have watched it. It was 56 or something. Was Forbidden
56.
Planet. So it's a long time ago. Man, I can't believe I got that year right. But it was like a foundational science fiction movie. But they show up on this planet where there's this. It's an extinct alien civilization. It was a big civilization, lots of cities and everything, high tech. But these aliens, spoiler alert, but the thing was 1956, so get over it. But so these aliens have found a way to like enhance their minds and kind of explore kind of virtual reality stuff. But what they did not count on was that their own subconscious, their own id, their own darker side got to be so powerful that when they amped up their brains, their id, their darker side came up and it wiped out their civilization. And I can just see humans doing that because we've got a dark side, we've got a dark side. And
it's telling the future, the Krell.
And didn't they have like the theremin music, the weird theremin music going on? So my recommendation, guys, if you haven't seen it in a while or if you haven't seen it yet, go out and find Forbidden Planet, go out and watch Alien again. They're just great classic movies.
I constantly go back. Now there is. I constantly go back and watch the old stuff, even like Silent Running or Logan's Run. Fantastic movies, and I like that period too as well.
Yeah,
Space 1999.
You're old.
I know. But if you think about it, like I'm wearing a Blade Runner T-shirt right now, and that's another story, obviously retold in the film. It's an older story, but the point being that Blade Runner, which stands on its own, it's like ancient now. That's an old movie. That's 85. That's 40 plus years old.
That's still one of my absolute top 5 favorite movies, period.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
Such a perfect movie.
Yeah, it's a perfect movie. There's a lot of perfect films out there. But looking back, 2001 obviously, stands on its own. Forbidden Planet certainly does. But Blade Runner, Alien, Star Wars, the first one, whatever they're calling that now, episode 4.
A New Hope.
A New Hope. But today, There's also good stuff that's out, like Interstellar is a really good movie, and Arrival, really good. Contact, even though now that's like an older movie, but it's Carl Sagan, of course, but it still stands on its own today too as well. There's newer stuff. It's not always about Close Encounters.
Let's throw Dune out there, because I kind of worked on that as a consultant.
Let's okay.
I think Dune was a pretty darn good movie too. So
let me ask you. Now I went through everything. I still think David's original Dune stands on its own. Okay, I'm gonna go. I like that.
Apples and oranges, completely.
Right, completely. I watched the TV series. I watched Children of Dune. I've read all of the books. I went through all of it, but I have to say, I wanted to be disappointed with part 1 and part 2, and I was not. I thought part 1 and part 2 were both excellent films and a study in great screenplay, great writing, great cinematography, and great acting. I'm just thankful that they were as great as they were.
And the director, Denis Villeneuve, is the same guy that did Arrival, and he did Blade Runner 2049. So
that's right.
He's got a pretty and Blade Runner 2049 is, in my mind, one of the best sequels ever. You gotta really pay attention. You gotta really watch it, because a lot of stuff is like under a couple of different layers. But that is a powerful, mind-blowing movie. And
so, what did you do for part 1 and part 2?
So I'm creative consultant on part 1 and co-producer on part 2. What Brian Herbert, my co-author, who's Frank Herbert's son, he and I worked as, basically we would read the script and give our feedback, because we know Frank's original books kind of inside and out. I have read Dune, I think 27 times. And so we wrote all these books in the Dune universe. And we read, just reading thousands of pages of Frank's notes with his ideas for things he wanted to do. Like, it really helped us get into his mindset. But also, I just wrote the scripts for the graphic novel of Dune. So it's 3 volumes, and we literally adapted it to comics, scene for scene, the way the book is written. And so in order to write that script, I had to put Dune under an electron microscope and just study every single bit of it and how he put everything together. And it still astonished me. Again, after reading it 25 times, I'm still finding, wait, I never noticed that part before, or I never noticed that little thing, how it came together. And so the graphic novel, that's out from Abrams Books. You can, again, order it, find it somewhere. And our novels are out there, again, Wordfire Shop, but you can get our Dune novels just about any place you can buy books. Our newest one was called Princess of Dune. It's a prequel. It's the life story of Princess Irulan and her battles at Imperial Court. And then it's tied with the story of Chani. So Paul's love of his life and how she was raised among the Fremen to fight against the Outworlders. Anyway.
The way that book came out in the early 60s, I'm talking about the first run of Dune.
63.
What's that? 63. When I was born. So who's older now that I've disclosed?
I'm born in 62, so I'm just a little tiny bit older than you are.
Well, you look better than I do, so you got that going for you. But
I don't have thinning hair or gray anymore, so that just took, not that you do, but that shaved years off of my life. I
got gray, but it grows an inch a month. It just,
wow.
It's crazy. My hair is just nuts. People think I dye it. What they don't know is, if they look really, you can see the gray. I'm full of gray. And I have these long, graceful gray hairs, and I love it.
Well preserved.
I love it. I love it.
That's what counts.
So the reason why I bring up the book has been around for a while, and people have had this fixation on not only the story behind Dune and the characters of it, but could it ever be made into a film? And that was always the question, because it's kind of like the Lord of the Rings or anything like that, where you have these epic, stories that span time, and they're so huge. How do you get that into a film? It seems impossible. But so going to the original Dune movie, Kyle MacLachlan played Paul perfectly, but because it was so long ago, now we're kind of fixated on who Paul Atreides is, right? Does it make sense? Make sense? And then now here comes Dune Part 1 and bring in Timothée Chalamet. I'm like, no, and I like Timothy's cool. I have no issues with him. He's really great in Don't Look Up, by the way. But I think he pulled it off. I think he pulled off Paul. Were you okay with that?
Yeah. Well, now I got to throw this back at you because Kyle MacLachlan doesn't really like. Look, I have a real soft spot for the David Lynch movie. That they did a lot of things that wasn't the way the book is, but it was so corny and campy, and I love the Bring Me the Floating Fat Man, and I love so. But if you read the book, Paul Atreides is 15 years old. He's got raven black hair, and he's very skinny and slight, and he's not tall at all. You kind of underestimate him because he's Muad'Dib. He's the desert mouse. He's kind of this unimpressive guy that's 15 years old. I think Timothée Chalamet fits that description perfectly. I think Kyle MacLachlan is kind of too. Do you think Kyle MacLachlan looks 15 years old in that movie?
No. And you're answering my question spot on. So, which is what I was saying. We have the Paul in the book that we've now, right? We've had quite a while. We've had 20 years to absorb that version of Paul. David Lynch comes along now. Now Paul is now Kyle MacLachlan. So now we've got Kyle on the brain, is what I'm saying. Mm. And then it rolls into Dune Part 1, and we've got Timothée Chalamet, and all of us had to make that adjustment because Paul is the central character, and he's strong. He's the man. He's the dude.
But he's strong like Napoleon. Napoleon was not some big action hero. But he was like this. He was a military genius. Well, let me throw another casting thing at you, because one of the things I heard complaints about most, just when the fan buzz was going around, was Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho.
Yeah,
and
didn't dig it.
Big popular. Well, but then you read the description of Duncan Idaho in a book, and he's this big, hale and hearty guy with goat black hair and a loud, booming voice and sense of humor, and he's Paul's best friend, and it's Jason Momoa, man.
But that's the power of David Lynch. David Lynch got it burned into our. You know what, though? And I'll say this for everybody that goes with the original Dune film, all right, the David Lynch. No, they are lying. Everybody loved that film. It was well made. It was well made.
But the new version, I don't think they were trying to remake the Lynch movie. They were literally going back to the Frank Herbert's book and doing their version of Frank Herbert. So you just have to look at it as the Tim Burton Batman and the right. the later what's his name, Christopher
Nolan.
Nolan. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. I'm 60.
Yeah.
I'm 62, so I'm getting old and senile. But
I like the Tim Burton jab, though. That was pretty good. That was
yeah. But I'm just saying that's two different realities of Batman. And then Adam West is a different one. So there are people. I grew up on Adam West Batman. I love Adam West Batman. I don't think he'd be my Batman if I wanted to write it. But you know what I mean. That we can hold two things at once. That there's the David Lynch Dune, and there's the legendary Dune, and there's the Frank Herbert novel Dune. I mean, there were purists who complained about the Peter Jackson Lord of the Ring movies, which were I think they were masterpieces. I thought that those movies, gosh, I mean, if anything captured the look and feel of that epic Lord of the Rings, those movies did. And yet there were still people who complained, they left out Tom Bombadil and whatever. But, they were already 3 hours each. So you can't put everything in there.
No, that's right. That's right. And we need to, Kevin, I've got to get a commercial in. So let's do that now. Our guest tonight, Kevin J. Anderson. We're talking about science fiction, all of it. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. This is Fade to Black. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Look what I got in my hand. Fade to Black blend coffee. It's so good, my picture's on it. Fade to Black blend coffee. I've got some more. Get a Game Changer membership. Right now, dated October 29th. Get a Game Changer membership. It's right there. You'll get a t-shirt, and you'll get Fade to Black blend coffee. I'll throw some of this in there for you. You got to have a coffee grinder, though. This is for real coffee drinkers. Yeah, real coffee. It's whole bean. And while you're at it, while you're on your Interbox, Nether Station, released today. The author, Kevin J. Anderson, is with us tonight. And tonight we are talking science fiction all night long. And now, so let's go on the Wayback Machine. I'm walking in my office for the company that I worked for in Culver City, California, walking down the hallway. And I had just watched the latest episode of The X-Files, right? Season 1. And I'm tripping, and I'm happy that this new TV series that was written just for me, right? Produced just for me. And I felt I was just warm and fuzzy. I'm walking down the hallway, and I walk into the marketing department. I was in sales, and I walk into the marketing department, and I see 3 or 4 people in the marketing department grouped together talking. I walk by, and they're going, "Yeah." And then and the X-Files. And I stopped. I went, "You guys watch the X-Files, man? We of course, right?" And so we start talking, and suddenly I find out that people that I worked with every day that I never talked about UFOs with, or the paranormal, or the supernatural, are all into this subject. And that's what I think the X-Files brought out in the, not only in the audience, but in the rest of the world, this safe zone of having a conversation about subjects that normally were pretty taboo. And that's hats off to X-Files, right? For doing that for the world.
Oh, that was, I mean, I was a big fan because we're about the same age. You remember Kolchak, the Night Stalker? Kolchak, to me, I was a little kid at that time, but those shows, we used the investigative reporter, and he was always looking for Bigfoot or vampires or swamp monsters. That was clearly sort of a precursor to the X-Files. And when the X-Files came on, I started watching this, and I mean, they weren't all about UFOs. Some of them were, but they made it into sort of this fascinating part about UFOs. But, I got to tell you, the ones that I liked the most were sort of the individual kind of monster of the week ones, where they met the little green lights that were in the forest that would find and kill people. Or there's an episode where the circus freaks went to Florida to have their winter, and one of them got murdered, and there was this whole mystery among the circus freaks. And there's this guy who could like stretch out his joints, and I think he was stealing people's kidneys or something like that. His name was Toombs. All these episodes, and I loved them. And so this is how I feel like I've led a charmed life sometimes. So I think we're in the second season of the show, and this is like the show made for me, just like it was made for you. I'm loving this every week. And at that time, I had started writing my Star Wars books. I wrote 50 some books for Lucasfilm. I wrote the Jedi Academy trilogy, which were the 3 like sequels to the original 3 Star Wars movies. And then I wrote another Star Wars book. And unbeknownst to me, Chris Carter, the creator and producer of the X-Files, he read my Star Wars books. And I got a call sort of from out of the blue saying, well, Kevin, have you ever watched the X-Files? Because Chris Carter loves your Star Wars books, and he wants you to write X-Files books for him. And I'm like, holy, I would love to. And so they flew me out. I'm in the 1013 studios, and I'm meeting Chris Carter for the first time. And he's got all my Star Wars books on his coffee table in the studio office. And like the first thing he asked me is, so Kevin, have you seen the X-Files? Like, open the door for me, man. I just was like, I've loved this show. I watch it every week. It was long before I knew you had read my books that I watch it as a fan, and I love this show. And so I got the job. We can put it that way. But you talked about the Wayback Machine. So I signed up to write a couple of books, and this was before Netflix. This was before internet and YouTube and stuff like that. So in order for me to do my research, remember at the time you watched that episode that week, and if you missed it, you had to wait for the end of the season and the reruns to come along. And if I'm going to write books, I need to watch these episodes over and over again. So they shipped me a box of VHS videotapes, like one tape per episode. I had this whole box. They had all the X-Files episodes one at a time in the so I would play them on the VCR, and I would freeze it and watch so I could jot down like what was Mulder's apartment number and what. I mean, this was before like Wikipedia that you could look this stuff up. I had to study each one. In fact, I remember there's one episode where I think it's called Fire, where Mulder, there's an arsonist, but it might be like a flame creature that's burning down these. And so I'm watching this episode, and it was a brand new episode, and the VHS tape that I got, I'm watching the whole show, and then the screen goes blank, and it says insert FX here, and then it goes back to the show, and then another blank one that insert FX here. So they hadn't even gotten the effects done. So I'm really watching this pre-release version of the show, and so I did my first one. We'll show it up. It's called Ground Zero. This is a cool story. It's about the ghosts from atomic bomb tests. We dropped hydrogen bombs out in the South Pacific atolls. We would buy an atoll of islands, and we take the islanders out and just drop an H-bomb out there to see what the explosion was like. And so in my story, there was one tribe that didn't get evacuated in time, so they all got killed. But now the ghosts from those H-bomb tests are coming back and murdering nuclear weapons researchers. And so that's one episode. And then the second one I did is called Ruins. It's about ancient aliens and the Mayan temples and the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, and that there's a hidden buried spaceship in a lost Inca temple or Mayan temple in the South American jungles. And then I did the third one called Antibodies, and that's about nanotechnology and a medical experiment gone wrong that creates a kind of like a cancer monster that's running around and attacking people. So those three books were my contribution. But when I asked Chris Carter, like, well, what do you want me to write? What kind of episodes? And he said something to me that kind of changed my career as a writer. That he said, so Kevin, you're a writer. You have an unlimited special effects budget. So I want you to write episodes of the X-Files that we could never do as a show. And it might sound simple for me to say that right now, but that was just such a mind-blowing revelation.
But he's right. He's right.
Yes.
He's spot on. He's spot on. He's spot on. You have that creative license.
Well, and I just went, what freedom that gives me. And so those books came out. Ground Zero was a #1 bestseller. That was my, to date, I've had a lot of bestsellers, but that was my only #1 international bestseller. And then the other ones did really well too. But that was kind of a big deal for me. And I, because you're a good guy, and because Fade to Black is a really cool audience and a big show. These books were out when the show was on. So that was, what was that, late 90s? Late 90s. Yeah. And so that's you crazy. Can't just walk into a bookstore and find them. But I have a bunch of those copies that I've kept. And for this show, I put up on the wordfireshop.com, I've got all 3 of these paperbacks, all of them autographed for $15. So it's just
for the Fadernauts. Okay, Fadernauts. There you go. Wordfire, and the link, you can type it in if you want, but the links are below.
Wordfireshop.com. But they're all 3 of these books. I've had them, and it's like, well, nobody buys the X-Files books anymore, but I love the X-Files, and you people love the X-Files. So that's why I just went, I'm $15 for all 3 of them. I'm going to make a special deal for you guys.
Man, I wait a minute. Are these autographed? These aren't autographed. I'm sending these back.
I signed it to you. Look on the title page.
Hold on. Let me flip it up. Oh! It's autographed.
I'm glad you caught it before you sold it on eBay or something.
Now, okay, so let's pump the brakes here for a second. So now you've got this creative license. You do 3 books with 3 different ideas, right? We've got ghosts, we've got, or spirits, whatever, however you want to define that. You've got ancient aliens, and you've got nanotech. This idea behind
stuff.
Yeah. And so let's go with the middle. Let's go with ancient aliens. Do you jump into that and go down that rabbit hole and look into the concepts of not only the Mayan culture, but whatever, Egypt or different cultures around the world? Eric Von Daniken, are you going down that road?
Oh, I read all those books, and Mulder believes all that stuff. So you got to get into all the. But in order to do the true work of a writer, the real veracity, to get everything right on it, before I actually wrote the draft of the book because there was a very tight deadline. But my wife and I went and spent a week in Cancun just so that we could research the Mayan temples, and I went to Chichen Itza. I went out into those jungles. We went to some of the lost Mayan things. Then we went to the resort and sat on the beach and stuff. But that was part of the research too. But I really got into it. That's how you go. And I tied it in with the Mayan legends of the feathered serpent. So I kind of tied in that the feathered serpent were like familiars that had come along with the ancient aliens, that like their dogs or something like that they were still around. And your imagination goes like crazy, because just being down there, the culture is so different. The history is just so palpable around you when you're in the jungle, and it's just overgrown. And there are these massive ziggurat temples, and they've all got these cartouches carved in them. And there's that famous Mayan image that I saw it. I think it's in Chichen Itza, where the guy clearly looks like he's in a starship control chair with like controls.
I have it. I have the carving of it, given to me from Giorgio Tsoukalos. By the way, it's a gift. It's hanging on the wall right there. And we just went to a break. Otherwise, I would pull it down and hold it up. But yeah, that is the tomb of Palenque.
Right.
And
so there's so many ideas you can play with, and that's what I used for that one.
well,
And
what do you think of the idea? Do you think that we have been visited for millennia?
well, I think it's just as possible that we've been visited a long time ago as we're being visited today. I mean, what our history has no relevance to any extraterrestrial civilization. So if they're going to come and visit us, they could have come 10,000 years ago, or they could have
Right.
come.
And so go back. Let's go back to the image of that, because when you see Palenque and you look and you really absorb it, it's a complicated carving, right? Is sarcophagus cover. And the original one, I think it was 6 feet by 8 feet, right? The dimensions of it's huge. But when you take it all in and you step back, you squint your eyes a little bit, then you understand what you're looking at. What is it that you think you're looking at, and what were the Mayans? Because the Mayans were trying to tell us something. They're freezing this moment in time. What do you think is actually represented there?
Well, man, that I couldn't tell you. I looked at, but here's the thing to think about: the Mayan and the Inca civilization. And I've been to Ecuador and up in some of the Inca walls and ruins and stuff. It is near inconceivable that these quote unquote primitive native tribes did these fantastic things. Like the Mayans built these incredible stone walls, and the blocks fit together. They're laser cut. And they're not like some people with a stone hammer that hammered something. The precision that they used is incredible. And the other thing that blows my mind are those drawings on the plains of Nazca, like miles long, that they make this drawing of a bird or a spider and things. Who could figure that out? Well, I mean, they did. They were smart, but why did they do that? Where did it come from? How did they get the engineering marvels to it? I'm not going to answer you, but I'm going to tell you that it's damned impressive. It is. It really kind of makes me fascinated by it. And so, of course, in Nether Station, there are ancient gods that were Lovecraftian that came 10,000 years before civilization and all that stuff. But I'm not saying that's true. It's just part of my story.
Well, but see, we can't be closed-minded with any of this when it comes to ancient history, or what could possibly be out there in the universe, or what could be going on with what is out there in the universe. It's beyond our imagination. You can take your imagination and think the craziest thought, and what is going on out there is that and more. What did Leonard Susskind say, the physicist? He said, everything will happen. He says it's everything. It's probabilities. Anything that you can think of, the craziest thing, will eventually happen, and that's it. That's it. He gives an example. This is his example. I'll make it very brief. He goes, you have a bowl of oatmeal on your kitchen counter. You knock it off the kitchen counter. It falls to the floor. The bowl breaks. The glass shatters. The oatmeal is all over the floor. And as you look at it, the molecules and the particles start to reassemble. The bowl goes back together. The oatmeal goes back in the bowl. The bowl floats up and goes back on the counter. Seems impossible, but it will happen one day. And you have to look at it, whatever it is, it's just a numbers game. Everything will eventually happen. So the Nether Station, right? Another world, God's coming here, wormholes from Alpha Centauri. Yeah, it's just a matter of when. And
Well,
that's why science fiction it doesn't predict the future. It's just that it's a numbers game, Kevin. It'll eventually happen.
In my experience, whenever I've spilled my oatmeal, that has never happened to me. But it would be nice. It would save a lot of mess. But
yeah. Suskin says it won't. It may not happen tomorrow, but it will happen.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
it's pretty wild.
That's heavy stuff. But I do write some goofy, humorous things too, and I have a lot of different things on my plate, and I'm a fanboy, and I read all kinds of different things, and I like to write all kinds of different things, and I've got readers and fans that just like, well, when's the next one of these? When's the next one of these? And I do want to mention another series I have, because it's just the joy of my writing career. And I created something called Dan Shamble Zombie PI. And it is just a slapstick, really fun series. And I like to call it, it's like the Addams Family meets the Naked Gun. And there's Death Warmed Over. There's the first one. And I try to write one of these every year. And I'm just coming out with a brand new one right now. And these are, this is in my fantasy world that this weird alignment of planets happened and never happened. All the planets aligned, and it was a full moon. And exactly at midnight, there was virgin's blood spilled on the page of the original Necronomicon. And it didn't really matter that the virgin was a 50-year-old librarian, and she cut her finger with a paper cut on the Necronomicon, but it was still virgin's blood on a page of the Necronomicon. And so that caused this. It changed reality. So all of the monsters came back to the world. All the vampires, mummies, ghosts, werewolves, everything in every horror movie, every ghost story, they all came back. And after people freaked out for quite a while, then they kind of realized that the monsters just sort of want to live their own lives like everybody else. And they settled down in a place I called the Unnatural Quarter. So it's sort of like in New Orleans, and all the monsters live there. But they have normal lives. And my character, Dan Shamble, he's a private detective. He's a human private detective, because monsters have legal problems too, that werewolves get divorced, and there are still missing persons, and there are lawsuits over the property lines. And so Dan Shamble, the private investigator, and he's got a bleeding heart human lawyer partner, they just do their cases with the monsters. But Dan ended up getting murdered in one of his cases because he stumbled upon the wrong thing. He got shot in the back of the head in a dark alley. But in this world, he comes back as a zombie, and he's back from the dead and back on the case, and he's solving crimes. He's there's all kinds of goofy. These are dad jokes and kind of laugh out loud things, and they're bad puns. And he's got a ghost girlfriend and his best human friend, his BHF. He's a beat cop who walks the streets of the Unnatural Quarter, and he's been transferred there because he had a penchant for telling too many off-color, politically incorrect jokes, and so they assigned him to the Unnatural Quarter. And he finds he can still tell the bad jokes as long as he uses monsters instead of ethnic groups, so he can get away with the bad jokes. But this whole series, I did the first 4 books from a regular publisher, and they kind of lost steam, and the publisher didn't want to continue it. So I published a couple of short story collections myself, and I wrote a brand new novel in it. But then I discovered something that kind of changed my entire writing life, in that it's a thing called Kickstarter. And it is a way for authors or other creatives, whether they're artists or musicians or whatever, that I had so many fans writing me and demanding they wanted another Dan Shamble book. But I wasn't, because I'm writing Dune novels and X-Files and things. It was a little hard to justify it because they weren't paying as much. Well, a Kickstarter is a way for the fans to actually go directly to the writer. And so I ran a Kickstarter campaign saying, all right, if you want me to write a Dan Shamble novel, you can buy the hardcover or the ebook or the audiobook. And basically it's like buying an album before it's released, and then you get it on release day. Only in this case, they're paying me the costs of writing the book and producing the book. Like as you can guess, like I have to pay for the cover art, I have to pay for the editing, I got to pay for the printing and the shipping, and this is how I make my living. So I have to make a profit out of it too. And I put up this campaign, and the fans just came in droves. It was amazing. I got paid 3 times as much as what I was making from the old publisher.
It's a brave new world, isn't it? It's the Kickstarter stuff on Wordfire Shop.
No, it's called Kickstarter.com. That's the main.
Well, I know that.
Well, you go to Kickstarter.com and then you just search for my name, Kevin J. Anderson, and this will pop right up. It's a brand new one I launched just this morning for a new novel. There's a new story collection. I've even got a brand new Dan Shamble combat card game, and I have a jigsaw puzzle on it. And it just launched this morning. As of right now, we have, and it hasn't even been 12 hours yet. We've met our funding goal by more than 3 times. There's that many fans out there.
You know what I appreciate today is when I am watching a film, I'm reading a graphic novel. Well, let's use film as the medium. And I'm watching a film and it gets to the end and it gets to the special thanks to everybody on Kickstarter.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll go back and jump on the net and read about the film and go, what? Now I want to know about the background. And that is the world that we live in today, where if you are good, right? If you've got a creative idea, people will resonate with it. Yeah, exactly. And people resonate with it and they want to support you. And then for the director of the film to give everybody a producer's credit, because that's essentially what they've done, right? I think that's extraordinary. And some of the best films that I have seen in the last 5 years have been viewer supported, fan supported, Kickstarter supported, and these films would have never been made if it wasn't for the fans supporting them. Have you seen Star Trek Continues?
Yeah, and I've seen there's another Space Command science fiction show that's all being Kickstarter funded. There's these.
Yeah. I've had everybody on that show. I've had on Coast to Coast and Fade to Black. I've hung out with them and stuff.
So
it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary how great it is.
But we talked about the Dune movie that just came out. Well, it took 25 years of us trying to get them to make that movie before it finally got through all of the hurdles and things. I have several other projects that have been optioned and whatever, and they just take forever because there's so many layers to go through. And so if you're a young, you don't have to be young, if you're just this hot, innovative director and you can get the possible moviegoers to just give you the money, you're cutting out 25 layers of middlemen and you're just getting it. And so like for my instance, in normal publishing, I, the author, I want to write a book. And so I send a proposal to my agent, who sends it to my editor, who takes it up to their marketing department, who goes to the publisher, who decides they want to do it. And then I go through all these steps, and then it goes from the book gets ready, and then it goes to the sales reps who go to the bookstore, who then sell the books to the customer. Well, with Kickstarter, it's me, Kevin, selling to you, the reader. It's like cutting out all those steps. And, guess what? All those other people take a cut of the money too. So
well, and the studio sends in the bag man, right?
Right.
And script rewrites and a fresh edit. And one of the executive producers has a niece or nephew that they want to break into show business, and you have to deal with all of that when you have full creative, right? Full creative. You're editing, you're shooting, special effects, the titles, right? And the casting and everything else involved with it and locations, and it's all your call. Well, if it goes bad, it's on you, right? But you want that. You want to be able to have that kind of control. So your vision is your vision, and not somebody else's from the studio lot. And I think that's very important. Or in publishing, it's the same thing in publishing.
Right, but the catch is you got to know how to do all those steps, and not everybody can. And I've been around forever. I've been a publisher for many years. I know how to produce a book, and I've got your Slimy Underbelly. That's one of the books in there. And so in the Kickstarter, you could buy the whole set. So if you're new to this series, you can get the whole set of ebooks or the audiobooks. I narrate the audiobooks because I get my own jokes and I can laugh at them. But you got them right there, Jimmy. We were talking before. One of those books, Nether Station, is from a regular big traditional publisher. And the other one, Death Warmed Over, is what I did from my own homegrown press. You cannot tell the difference. Those are both professional quality books, and we know how to do these things now. And so,
well, okay, so you can get it out there into the public's hands, but where do you draw inspiration from? Because we're dealing with ghosts, we're dealing with space, we're dealing with heroes and the hero's journey, and every other concept under the sun is there. Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Well, it's kind of, that's the most common question authors get asked. So where do you get your ideas? And I kept thinking of the right answer for that because it always baffled me. So my real answer is, how do the rest of you stop them from coming? Because to me, it's like this constant flood of, I could do that as a story, or that would be an idea for a character, or that's a cool setting. And I have notebooks filled with ideas that I will never be able to write if I live to be 1,000 years. And it's just, it's this twisted way of looking at the world of, that could be a story. And my wife, who's also a best-selling author, we would, like, we're driving together, and like some guy driving in front of us does something weird, like he cuts three lanes, or he doesn't signal or something, and we go, he's wrestling with an invisible alien in the front seat of the car, and he's like wrestling with the steering wheel, but he's trying to not kill the people in the cars that are behind him, and so he's trying to get it. We just make up stuff when we see weird things in the road, and it's just this. It's like exercising your muscle. If you're working out with weight training, the more you do it, the more muscles you get. And I have been making up stories since I was 5 years old. And I'm not kidding, because I have the one I wrote when I was 5 years old. And that's just, but the way my brain works is like everything about me is I want to tell a story. And the idea now with Kickstarter and being able to do Dan Shamble and produce all these books, it's like opportunities that authors have never had before. We always had to get an agent who would send to one of the big publishers. And of course, 1 in 50,000 got accepted. Well, probably better than that. But now you can get your book published. Doesn't mean it's going to get anybody to read it, but still, you have that avenue that you can write a book and you can publish it and you can distribute it and you can put it on Amazon and you can get print copies and you can sell it at your local farmer's market. I mean, do you know that? I mean, there are a lot of authors that they go to their farmer's market every weekend and they get a table and they have their books and they sell them. It's almost like this artisanal craftsmanship thing that you can make your books and you find your audience and you get people that want to read them. And it's, to me, I think this is like the most exciting time to be a writer. Whereas
you still have to have a story, right? You still have to be good. And I give this warning out there a lot because I think that in today's world, in the generations that are under us, the instant gratification thing seems to be a right and not a privilege. That so many out there just feel that all I got to do is get a microphone and a webcam and set up my YouTube channel, and I'm an influencer, and I will have 1 million subscribers in a week, and I'll have a Ferrari and a Lamborghini, and I'm going to do. They just wait a minute, yeah, but that's the expectations that so many have. That writing a book or making a video or making a movie or doing what that it. All you got to do is just start your YouTube channel. All you got to do is publish something to Amazon, and you're going to go to number one. You're going to have a best. It's no. People need to resonate with you. And if they do resonate, you're off to the races. That's great. But that doesn't mean just because you have a YouTube channel or you've written something and you publish it on Amazon that it is going to be a guaranteed success. Life doesn't work that way. And it's really strange. We have all of these avenues today, right? You don't have to deal with publishing houses or networks. You don't have to, but you still have to have talent. That's the raw ingredient, isn't it?
Well, that I like to compare it to being an Olympic athlete. It's like, sure, everybody can be an ice skater, but they're not all going to make the Olympic team. And the ones who do make the Olympic team, guess what they do? They practice every frickin' day from the time they're 5 years old, and they get good, and they still might not make the Olympic team. You can't just say, I want to play pro football because I watched it on TV once. I mean, that you still have to get to that level, but there are more doors open now, and there's more possibilities and avenues that if you have the entrepreneurial spirit, and if you work your butt off, and like being a freelance writer, you only work half time. It's a 12-hour days every single day. It's half time. So that's
yeah. Let's move on with the little time that we have left. Right. DNA. Okay, so we've got DNA on planet Earth. You and I, hopefully, most of us, 2 arms, 2 legs, right? 10 fingers and toes, couple eyes, couple of ears, right? Okay, maybe some hair.
Maybe. Here.
Okay, so that, but DNA are just particles and would have to be universal. Now you've got to explore these concepts when you're writing. How do you envision aliens? Are they all just like us, which is what I believe, or are they octopus with 8 arms, right? Insectoid mantis beings? How do you approach that with the freedom of being able to do whatever you want?
Well, see, I go back to what is the environment that they came from? Like if they're from a large, very heavy gravity planet, they're not going to have skinny breakable leg bones like we have. They're going to be built to a different geometrical structure.
Short and stumpy.
Like what if you are in a very cold planet, you'll end up with ways to either regulate your temperature or fur or something like that. I actually think that there are so many alien environments and so many DNA combinations that, like the Star Trek thing where everybody looks like humans except they got a little brow ridge or they've got a pointy ear or something, unless you agree with the panspermia that we all did come from a single origin, well, then that's why we would look the same. But if these are literally different species that evolved on entirely different planets and different environments, they're gonna look different because they'll be adapted to their environment. Like if you look at like the original theory of evolution that Darwin came up with is he went to the Galapagos Islands, which were isolated islands, and he was able to see how species that had come from one bodily configuration had adapted to these islands over umpty-ump generations, and you could just draw the line from this kind of turtle to that kind of turtle, or this kind of iguana to that kind of iguana. And it's because the environment on the Galapagos Islands was different from where the species originated from. And so I believe that there's a perfectly good chance that there are life forms in the cloud layers of Jupiter, that if you get to the right pressure and density and the right combination of organic chemicals, that something might link together into a reproducible virus that might evolve into a bacterium that might, and come up into something. Do you think a person from the gas clouds of Jupiter will look like you and me with arms and legs and a head? They're going to look like big jellyfish or something like that.
Well, but if they eventually invent fire and move into an industrial age and make records and have telephones, they would have to have opposable thumbs.
Well, true. So you got me there, but I'm not sure they're going to be. They're not sure they're going to be making telephones in the clouds of Jupiter. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that there are the definition of life. If you look at the myriad possibilities in the universe, there could be like a nebula gas that has enough like electrical things that connect to it so that you could consider it thought patterns. And
do you think that will evolve into something like that? Do you think that eventually humans will be energy light beings and we will shed these meat suits?
Oh, well, that's a whole different question, because I think right now your question is not eventually far in the future. I think that AI possibilities, that fusing us with artificial intelligences, that could well happen in a generation or two, because it's taking off so fast. That we could, if I get diagnosed with a terminal illness, I could download my entire body or mind and personality into an artificial intelligence matrix, so that this version of Kevin would be around forever. Well, this version of Kevin would eventually die from old age or from the disease or whatever, but the essence of my thought patterns and my memories and whatever could still be stored. But then you get a different question of, is that me or not? Is that a copy of me? Does my soul go along with it, or can you define what the soul is? And that
do androids
dream of electric sleep? Yes.
Yeah. Do androids dream of electric sheep? And that question. So I think about this all the time. So does the digital Kevin remember and have an emotional attachment to his progenitor? Right.
Well, and it depends on how high of a resolution it is. Like if you went to one of those bad old gray smelly photocopiers and you did a piece of art and photocopied it, it would not look the same. But if you get a good enough photocopier, it does look pretty much the same. And if there's the copy of everything that is me, that is in some artificial intelligence matrix, but it's everything that is me from the instant they take that snapshot.
Well, okay. Wait. Stop. Does that new Kevin get to learn and advance from where that snapshot was taken? Do you continue your education forever? Right? So does that new version get to develop?
Oh, I think so. And in fact, I think they diverge, because every moment after that, this meat suit Kevin, am experiencing different things than the AI version of Kevin is. And so there are different thoughts being sparked, different conclusions, it's the butterfly effect, and everything is going to go different. But you just gave me an idea for a story. So what if I copy myself and then we split off and we both have an idea for the same story? We both write it. Who owns the copyright? Because we both did it. So that's completely different thing.
Okay. Next question. I set you up for this beautifully. Okay. Does consciousness exist in the physical or the non-physical? So your digital backup, right, that resides now in ones and zeros. Mm-hmm. But what about your consciousness? Does the sentient side of you, where does that go? Does consciousness exist in the physical or the non-physical?
Well, and see, that all depends on it. If the AI is such a perfect copy, does it think it has consciousness? And if it thinks it has consciousness, how do we decide whether that is consciousness or not? And this gets to an unanswerable question, because my biology will tell me that everything that makes up who I am is a bunch of chemicals and electrical impulses inside my brain. And in that case, A, it could be reproducible, highly sophisticated, but it could be reproducible. But B, that's kind of disheartening, because I'm just like an accidental milkshake that happens to have stuff going on. So we as humans want to think that we're special, that we want to think that once I die, that everything that's in here, because I think that I'm pretty special, I've got my personality, I've got my memories, I've got everything. Does that all just go away once the chemicals are spilled?
No.
And that's a question. And
no. But so what you're suggesting then, and I like where you're going with this. I'm just trying to get a firm answer out of you, by the way. I'm not agreeing with you, but I appreciate the answer. But what you're suggesting then, if that is the case, then AI can and does have a consciousness by default eventually.
Well, I mean, if it is a perfect molecule by molecule copy of, although you wouldn't copy my brain because it's a soft gray tissue that gets damaged, you would copy it into a computer matrix that would keep it undamaged. It's sort of like the digital copy of your vinyl LP phonograph record, right? So here's my question. That this is a comparison. So I've got all these old vinyl Rush albums, right? I've also got my CDs. I even have some old cassettes, but I can go on Apple Music and I have iTunes or something that I can play the same song, Tom Sawyer. Which one is the real song?
Neither.
See, and by extension, my thoughts and consciousness, that could be the same thing as that song Tom Sawyer by Rush, that it is sounds and music and musical instruments that created this vast creative symphony that nobody else had ever done before. And we have preserved that, and I can play Tom Sawyer anytime I want. I can play it on my iPhone, I can play it on my CD player, I can play it on my cassette player if it still worked. And it's the same song, but it exists in different media.
Yeah, it's an interpretation. It's an interpolation of the song.
I mean, are you
no,
saying
the original disappeared in the ether. The original is whoever was in the studio listening to it as it was played. After that, everything else is just an interpretation. It's somebody else's interpretation. It's a mix. It's the mastering engineer. It's the way it's reproduced in the factory, the conversion of analog to digital. All of these things come into play. By the time a consumer has a CD, has a degraded, crappy MP3 file that they've downloaded from iTunes, right? And by the time that, you are talking 10, 12 generation away from the original masters and from the original performance. So all of that is an interpretation, which takes us back to your point. The version of you that is downloaded onto the drive, how much of the original you is lost in that file transfer?
Right.
And that, the clone of the clone of the clone, right? It degrades, right? And you get to the fifth clone and it's going up. It's not quite right, right? And speaks without it's forgotten letters, not only words, but just, it's just like yeah.
But I also think we're stretching this analogy, but I'm glad that was recorded so that all of us can enjoy Tom Sawyer by Rush. If the original thing was just an impromptu jazz performance in a club that nobody recorded and they would never do again, then that music is lost forever.
100%.
This way, I can play. Neil Peart's gone now. I can play his drumming anytime I want. I would rather have him here with me drumming, but I can't have that. And so the question is, if that is our choice between preserving my mind and memories and personality, or just letting it be like that jazz performance in the club that nobody recorded and it's never going to be heard again, well, I'd rather be on a CD.
Well, yes, of course. And I think about this all the time, that the generations of music lovers today that have only experienced MP3s, right? That have only experienced, that haven't experienced the glory of dropping the needle on a virgin vinyl album that you brought home for the first time, right? Remember that disc wipe that you put on the you remember that, right? You turn it, and you spin it, clean off all the dust, and you drop that needle down, and you think about that have never experienced music in that form. There's no digital introduced in between, right? It comes straight off the analog master tapes and then is cut on a lathe. Very direct.
And there's another thing that, so I'm really good friends with Don Perry, the drummer from Jethro Tull, and we talk all the time. And he told me this really cool story that his daughter had brought a boyfriend home or something like that, and they listened to a lot of music, and Don discovered that this guy only listened to individual songs on iTunes. And he said, "What, you mean you've never heard an album like a track one through from start to finish?" And he said, "No, he just listens to whatever the most popular track is here and there." And then Don is like, "But you never listened to Aqualung straight through, or Pink Floyd's The Wall straight through, or 2112, or like any number of these, like an album was like a novel. You would like do the whole thing start to finish as an entire artwork, and that form is kind of lost now, that people just go, oh,
completely lost
track and that track and that track. And but if you don't listen to 2112 as a whole, you just listen to a couple of random tracks off of it, you don't get what it is. And
no, the experience of, you're so right. The experience, kids today, we're the grumpy old men. Kids these days, they don't understand what we went through. We had to take the album up and flip it over to listen to side two. You did not. You're making stuff up now. No. Well, that was the rule. Side one, side two, right? Front to back, and you knew the tracks in order. The band wanted those tracks in that order.
On purpose. Yes. When I write a Dan Shamble book or Nether Station, I put chapter 2 after chapter 1 for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. So did you read the new Dan Shamble? Did you read the new Dan Shamble book? Well, I got the audio book. I went straight to chapter 6.
Well, I got chapter 6. I got chapter 5 because they were the highest rated on iTunes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh man, I love it. Kevin, great conversation tonight, man. And I know that where can everybody just reach out to you? We've got wordfire.com. Is there a way people can reach out to you directly?
Kind of the best way to find it, like on Facebook, just look up official Kevin J. Anderson. You'll find me there. I'm on Twitter, X, as the word "the" and then my initials KJA. I'm on those all the time. I interact with people. I have a Patreon in case you want to like support me and get free recipes and first drafts. And that's patreon.com/Kevin J. Anderson. There, I'm easy to find if you just start looking. But I mean, right now, as we're talking, today is release day for Nether Station, so that's our big thing. And today is the launch day for the Dan Shamble Kickstarter. And I got to tell you, while we were recording this episode, we are hitting 12 hours, and we just hit 3 times what we were looking for our funding. So this is going to help me get better editions and all kinds of stuff. So again, it is such an honor to be able to work directly with the readers and write the books that are my passion project. And it's the Kickstarter that helps me actually supports me to do that. So
yeah, and thank you so much. Everybody head over to wordfire.com and wordfireshop.com. The links are below. And Kevin, amazing conversation tonight. And the book is out. It was released today. Nether Station. I'll hold it up again so you can go and look it up on Amazon or head over to Kevin's website and check it out. And if you get it from wordfireshop.com, Kevin's going to sign it for you Fadernauts. Okay, so head over there. And he's also got the X-Files books for you Fadernauts over on his website, $15 a pop. Autographed. Can't beat that. Right. Kevin, thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation. Keep doing it, my friend.
Thought-provoking. Thank you. See ya.
Thank you so much. Perfect show tonight. Perfect show. So with that, Kevin J. Anderson, perfect. Okay, we've got the links below. What am I doing tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow, Jim Harold is here. It is Halloween Campfire right here tomorrow night. Fade to Black Halloween Campfire tomorrow night with Jim Harold. Kevin J. Anderson, thank you so much. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Until tomorrow night, all I've got is go backly tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go backly tappy.